Okay, so I wanted to talk about, good morning, everybody. And I wanted to, for those of you who haven't been on the launch calls, we've been talking about some things this week. And one of the things that we talked about yesterday was it's easy to be the best we can be when everything's going right. But what is our default behavior when things are not going right? What do we default to? Do we default to blame? Do we default to avoidance? Do we default to, oh, this is always happens to me kind of mentality, or do we default to anxiety? And so we can reset that default behavior the same way as we can reset our default browser or our default out of office message. We can reset our behaviors for when those times happen. And one of the things that we can do in the morning is we can ask ourselves 3 questions. And one of the questions is, what am I excited about today? For those of you who have children, if you make a conscious awareness of the moment that you see your child for the first time that day, that can be an excitement for the day to look forward to. It could be that you are excited about something that's happening in your day. It could be that you're excited about learning something new. But I think part of intentionally, people choose happiness, right? Some people just seem to be born happy, but a lot of people have to learn happiness. And one of the ways we do that is by setting some of these behaviors. So in the morning when you get up, ask yourself, what can I be excited about today? And really dive into that. And it could be as simple as my cup of coffee. I cannot wait to have my cup of coffee. I'm excited about that. It doesn't have to be monumental or profound. The second thing that you can ask yourself is, if something goes wrong today, how can I bring my best self? If something goes wrong today, how can I bring my best? And what does that look like? And I can tell you, I thought a little bit more about this from our conversation yesterday. And when something goes wrong and our default behavior is not one that we want it to be, whether it's blame or anger, one of those typical default behaviors, really what's happening is we're making it about us. And so the way to bring our best self when something goes wrong is to step back and say, how can I make this situation better? What questions can I ask that will help me gain better understanding so that I don't just react, so that I can actually bring my best self to a stressful situation? And in real estate, just as we talked about, things go wrong. I illustrated the closing that I have that's been was supposed to close March 1st. And now I think we're going to close next week. It was supposed to close yesterday. More things went wrong. So I can start blaming, or I can start getting anxious, or I can start getting desperate, or I can start worrying. But the way to bring your best self is sit back and say, how can I stay in the solution? What has to happen in order for me to be the best agent I can be for my sellers? What has to happen for me to be the best parent I can be when my kids are driving me crazy? What has to happen for me to be the best spouse when my spouses go on, not being supportive, or whatever it is. I heard people, I'm working down at the Mart today, and yesterday I wanted to treat my sister, or Tuesday was the other day I worked here. I wanted to treat my sister, who works down here sometimes, to a Chick-fil-A sandwich. And I got down to the Chick-fil-A, the lines around the hallway, because that's one of the few places that's open. And when I got up there, all that was left was spicy chicken sandwich. And you would not believe the default behaviors that I saw in that line when people couldn't get their regular Chick-fil-A. It was the most amazing thing. These poor people working behind the counter who have no control over that were being abused basically by people who wanted their darn chicken sandwich. And I sat there and I thought, really? You're making this all about you and your chicken sandwich when these people have lives? I mean, you get my drift. So I just wanted to talk about that. So that's the second question you can ask yourself, is how can I bring my best self when it's harder to bring my best self? And the third question is, what can I do during the day to remind myself that I'm bringing my best self? And a lot of this is coming from, a lot of us were in bold. Some of you new agents, you'll be in the next bold. But one of the tenets of bold is be, do, have. So I'm talking a lot about be today. and how we are human beings and not human doings. So the third thing is, like, for instance, you can have triggers during the day. We talk a lot about setting your alarm, and I'll just share mine with you. Okay, so I've got one. I don't know if you can see that, but it says at 8 p.m., energetic, fun, giving. That's when I turn my attention to my family. You can change the label when you set your alarm. And I've got alarms in here like call Joanna at 4 p.m. to remind me that that's when I said I was going to do. It's on my calendar, but if I don't look at my calendar during the day, this is another way to be reminded. And the way you do that is, if I'm going to set my alarm, I click the plus, and you see right down there where it says label, it's backwards. But all you do is you punch that arrow, and you can change where it says alarm to just about anything you want it to say. So you might have an alarm that says at 3 p.m., bring the joy, because maybe at 3 p.m. you notice that a lot of people around you are lacking energy. And you could be the person who brings the energy and the joy and lifts everybody else up. And that's one of the ways that you can trigger yourself to do that. Another way that you can do that is to say, whenever I walk through a doorway, how can I bring happiness? How can I bring my best self? What does that look like? So when I walk through the door of the office and I'm going, oh, I'm so tired, or I didn't get my coffee, or oh my goodness, I've got so much going on, or, whatever all that kind of thing is, that affects the people around you, right? And we want to be the people with one of the bold laws is people grow into the conversations we create around them. So we want to create conversations and energy around us for others to be lifted up. So if we have a trigger where every time I walk through a door, and a lot of this is from Bold and a lot's from High Performance Habits by Brendan Bouchard. So if we walk through a doorway and we say, every time I walk through a doorway, I'm going to set my intention to walk through that doorway as the best I can be. And pretty soon we've developed that habit of every time we walk through a doorway, whether it's walking through the doorway of our home, whether it's walking through the doorway of a shop, whether it's walking through the doorway of a house, we've set that intention. And when we talk about standards, because that's one of the things we want to talk about today, when we talk about standards, how we arrive and how we show up in our day is part of how we set our standards. Does that make sense to everybody? And you're going to have to nod because I can't hear everybody. Yeah. So would love for you to think intentionally about different ways during the day that you can bring your best self and how to trigger it, whether it's setting your alarm, or whether it's, that every time you walk through a door, or whether it's at certain times during the day you're going to reset. And then think about those default behaviors that happen when things aren't going right and it's harder to be the best we can be. And then as far as standards, so I can tell you that standards for me boil down to something very simple, and it's the platinum rule. It's treat people the way they want to be treated. Along with that goes that all of us want to be noticed. All of us want to be thought well of, unless we're sociopath or we have mental issues. When we recognize that and we go through our day looking at people and really looking at them and really considering who they are. I was on the train this morning and I was playing this game that my dad taught me. My dad was a motivational speaker, and he used to do these illustrations with us where we would be out and I would say, we would say, Daddy, tell us about that person, because he just understood human nature. And he would look at somebody and observe them for a few minutes, and then he would tell us all about them. And a lot of times what would happen is he would go over to them and say, I'm illustrating something for my children. I would love to be able to ask you some questions. So I noticed some things about you. And first of all, he's giving them a huge compliment because he's paying attention to them, which is what I was just talking about. Secondly, he's really considered them, which is also a compliment. So he'd say, I think you are going to work in a professional capacity. I think that you have a family and that you're very, I don't know, he would just go into detail about these people. And 9 times out of 10, he was right. So I was playing that game on the train this morning, and just, it's a good way for us to practice our getting out of ourselves and focusing on other people to play that game. So next time you're out and about, look at somebody, really watch what they're doing. Do they look stressed? I was watching this guy on the train this morning that had his mouth open, was sleeping and falling off his chair. And I thought, that guy didn't get enough sleep. But he had a little Yorkie that was in a stroller that was all wiped out. So it was fun. And I saw another guy with a scooter, and I was like, he's going to work. He's a millennial probably, or he's probably, what's the new one after millennial? The younger ones, Gen Xers. Yeah, he's probably a Gen Xer. He's going to his job, right? He was dressed in a nice business casual kind of thing, and I thought, he probably is looking for a girlfriend because he didn't. Anyway, I made up stories about people. So back to standards. When we think about our standards, we have standards for ourselves, right? How we show up. And we have standards for, and I wanted to go into detail with that because part of our standards are showing up for each other. It's a lot of times as realtors, we place our priorities based on the amount of money that we're going to receive. And so we'll show up for that listing when somebody says, hey, be on time for this listing. We'll show up for that buyer. But if another agent says, hey, I want to get together for coffee with you, and we blow them off and we blow them off and we blow them off because we're not going to make any money, that's a standard that we're setting. So many of us, I know Donna, I can just look at all of you and know that when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And that's one of the reasons why you're here. But I would also like to emphasize that when we're dealing with each other in this real estate world, it's really important to keep our commitments, even if there's no money involved. And it's also important to, for instance, if you are the listing agent and you've received 30 offers, each one of those agents worked really hard to put those offers together. Each one of those agents is concerned about the people that they're protecting, just like you would be. And each one of those agents deserves a thank you. Whether or not their offer wins, they deserve an acknowledgement and a thank you. And that's a highest and best standard. It's not happening out there. Agents are just ignoring and blowing off the offers that don't get accepted. So let's not be those people. Let's set our standards high, and let's give a thank you for everyone that submits an offer and say thank you for your hard work. We so appreciate that. And I can tell you, our real estate community is a small community. You never know when that agent's going to be on the other side and you're going to be one of 30 offers. And that agent remembers that you said thank you for your hard work. And I really appreciate the work that you did to put this offer together. They will remember you, and that might make a difference for your buyers. So when we talk about those kinds of standards, that's what I'm talking about. And then our standards in real estate, of course, that if we don't know how to write a contract, there's no shame in that, right? If we've encountered something new, I see it on the WhatsApp chat for some of the top agents in the office. I see on the WhatsApp chat that there's always questions about, how do I write this? What does this mean? Hey, I encountered this. Because the one thing in real estate is that we never experience, it's very, very rare to experience the same kind of transaction twice, which makes it really interesting. But we can ask questions if we don't know how to do something. And that's a standard. I think, especially when you get to be somebody who's producing, there gets to be a kind of ego thing where I have to know it all. But we all learn organically in this business based on our experiences. So always, always, always ask questions. We've got Pam Sliger on here. Pam is one of our mentors. I always watch what she says, always. I always watch if Susan Corley is on, or Pam Sliger, or anything Bill says. I watch what they say, because even though I know a lot, I don't know everything. So as a new agent, there's no question that's a dumb question. Every question is to benefit you, to be able to help those that you're representing. Does that make sense? Everybody has to nod, because I don't know why I don't have sound on here. If anybody has questions, you can post them in the chat. Or if you have any thank you, Gen Z from Chris. Gen Z, not Gen X. If anybody has any comments or questions, just post them in the chat there and I'll review those. And then I wanted to talk about, we're kind of segueing 3 topics this morning. I wanted to kind of talk about time And I think one of the strongest and most insidious self-limiting beliefs is around time. There's this whole area of time management. And I kind of laugh at that because time can't be managed. Time is the same for all of us, right? We have to manage ourselves. So it's more like self-management. And when I tell myself, and I'm guilty of this too, when I tell myself I don't have enough time in the day, that's a self-limiting belief. I have exactly as much time as Elon Musk. I have exactly as much time as Richard Branson, who's went up to space recently. I have exactly as much time as the top performers in this industry. And as a new agent, I think one of the worst self-limiting beliefs that we can say to ourselves, and it's so common, is there's too much, I'm overwhelmed, I don't have enough time. That's a belief. I just want to really emphasize that that's a belief. And if you spend time focusing on that belief, you're making yourself, it's like you're having to wade through jello to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So if you can, I feel real passionately about this. I don't know if you can tell, but if we can all get those self-limiting beliefs about time out of our vocabulary, out of our thoughts, and just understand that I have exactly the same amount of time as Ebony has. I have exactly the same amount of time as Drew has. I have exactly the same amount of time as Dustin Kimberly has. And how I choose to spend my time is whether or not I feel crazy at the end of the day or whether I feel like I've moved my needle forward. Does that make sense to everybody? I know this is when it took me a while to get to this realization, and this is where discipline comes in, and discipline and systems comes in. So we talked yesterday on the launch call about the ideal agent schedule, which looks like getting up in the morning, doing your morning habits. We've talked about those a lot, but we have new people on, so I repeat it every once in a while. Getting up in the morning, priming yourself for your day is really important. So waking up with gratitude, waking up with prayer, listening to something motivational while you're getting dressed, journaling, reading, and then spending a few minutes on the market stats so that you know what's going on in your zip code that you work in. And you can either go to FMLS or Remind for those. If you go to Remind, it's right on the first page down at the Market Pulse. You can change it to today, yesterday. You can change it to any zip code that you want. But review those market stats so you know what's happening in your market, how many listings have come on, how many actives there are, how many contracts were written. It's a way that you can become an expert. And then if you know that during your day you're going to be working with a buyer in a certain area, or you're going to go on a listing appointment in a certain area, quickly research that area, do an internet search, and find out as much as you can about that neighborhood, find out as much as you can about that area, so that when you meet with them, you do have some information and they're not telling you everything, which makes you look, well, it makes us appear that we are not aware of what's around us. So those are some quick ways to become expert. And you can do that on the fly every single day. It takes about 5 minutes. And then the ideal agent schedule starts with, and this is where the discipline comes in and the time, the mindset around time. There has to be some lead gen. Lead gen is important. So we spend about 2 hours of lead gen. And we talked yesterday about that lead gen can be not only for ourselves and prospect. It doesn't have to be on the phone. It can be texting. It can be Facebook. It can be door knocking. There's hundreds of ways to lead gen. And we'll get more into those for new agents. And if you want to talk about those on your one-on-ones, we can talk about that as well. But then after lead gen, the ideal agent has appointments set on their calendar. So typically a lot of people lead gen from 9 to 11, then they have a break where they prepare for the appointments, and then the appointments start around 2 or 3 and go till 5 or 6. And that's how top agents who manage their schedules actually have kind of a 9 to 5 day, and they don't work in the evenings. Now, I'm going to say this again, the ideal agent schedule is kind of like a unicorn. We can believe in it. It doesn't always happen, but it's something to strive for. So, and then the other part that I needed to talk about was learning. So for especially for all of us, we have to put some time in our day for learning. So for newer agents, if you're not doing appointments yet in the afternoons, you can set some time on your calendar for learning. But I like to think of, for me, almost every day it's a lunch and learn. I'm almost always watching something, watching a webinar, watching a video, researching something as I'm eating my lunch. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but that's how I get my time in, my time for learning in. But it's just really important that you get these elements on your calendar every day. I'm so sorry that I've just been monologuing here. I really want to hear from you guys. Is there anything in chat that you want to put in? Anybody have any ideas about how they structure their day that's helpful? Because I know, Ryan, you were talking yesterday about, yeah, well, when the kids go back to school, you know, and the day looks way different when you have kids. So, and this is the other part, is our ideal agent schedule is designed to help us have more time with our families. But we have to factor in our ideal agent schedule. We have to factor in some time for craziness, for miscellaneous things, for, I forgot my backpack, can you bring it to school? For, Mom, I have this homework project, or Dad, I have this going on. Whatever it is, we have to factor some miscellaneous time into our days every day so that we don't go crazy. And the other part of it is that we have to factor some time in for ourselves. I was reading an article yesterday about self-care, and for some people, self-care is physical, and for some people, self-care is mental. So however you define self-care, whether it's, you know, maybe, I know when I used to teach jazzercise, Mom, I used to say, okay, now you've exercised, so go reward yourself. And I want you to take a bubble bath and get a book, get a glass of wine tonight, and, you know, sit back and read and relax, or put a book on tape on, you know, and listen to it. And the moms would just howl. I mean, they just howled. They were like, you're so funny, Candace, because they never had time to do that. But however you define self-care, it's really important to take time to do that. I think of it like, some of you know that I'm an artist. And I think as an artist, how I consider it is that there are times when I'm a sponge and I soak, and I get so full of things that at some point I have to start squeezing it out. Everything has to start pouring. And I think when we are inputting so much information on a daily basis, especially as new agents, as realtors, and we don't take time to express ourselves or to feed ourselves, we don't have as much to give to our clients. We don't have as much to give to our families. We don't have as much to give to everyone. And if we want to walk through every doorway and bring an energy of happiness and inspiration to others, we have to be able to take care of ourselves in order to do that. Does that make sense to everybody? Was this helpful? Did you learn some things today? Was that a surprise about the self-limiting belief about time? That was for me. The fact that for years I've said, I don't have enough time, or honey, I don't have time for you, or I'm so busy with this, I can't do that right now. That was kind of a huge aha for me this past week. So I hope that was helpful for some of you, and that's just a belief. And I say this a lot, we do not have to believe everything we think. Somebody put one thing in the chat so I know that, oh, yay. Thank you. Donna, thank you. I love that. Thank you, Donna. Donna says, very helpful reminders. I do try to start my day with the morning routine. It helps me to stay balanced throughout the day and to appreciate my experiences. And Drew, I know Drew starts his day as well with gratitude. So that was fantastic. And I can tell you it does change your day. Does anybody have any questions about standards? So I think the biggest thing I can say about standards is just remember that platinum rule, treat people the way, and golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated and treat people the way that they want to be treated. And that includes our coworkers and each of us as well. Thanks, Donna. Yeah, thank you. Donna says, I appreciate what you said about being grateful for other agents. And I think that's a piece that we forget. We get so focused on our own deals and our own clients that we forget that they're doing the same things that we're doing and caring just as much as we care. So to treat them as human beings as well is important. And that's pretty, I'm a half hour kind of person, so I don't go the full 45 minutes. I hope you'll appreciate the extra 15 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Okay, well, I hope you found this a good use of your time. And Chris, I will contact you about one-on-ones. If anybody has any questions or anything that comes up, just please feel free to reach out to Bill, me, one of our mentors, anybody, any leadership, and there's a lot of ALC agents who will also help. So you're not alone. What I always say is go out and make a mess, create some chaos, get clients, and we'll figure all that out. Don't worry. Don't worry about that. Thank you. Bye, everybody.